everyone, welcome back to Kirkley's Guitar School. So somebody in our Facebook group was asking about pedals and my approach to pedals, and particularly he had a Boss Katana and how to get a good sound with pedals. Now this is a topic that I could spend hours on, and various amplifiers, different settings. I think one big thing you need to take away before I start showing you loads of toys is some of the best guitar tones I've ever heard is a guitar just plugged straight into a little Fender amp. Now, not specific, it doesn't have to be a Fender amp, it could be a Marshall, it could be one thing or another. We're conditioned as a society to buy things. I'm going somewhere with this, don't run away, I'm going somewhere. We're conditioned to buy things like that next guitar is going to make us play better, that next pedal's going to make us sound different. It's nice to have nice things, and I'm fortunate enough to have some nice things to play with, but really what's made my guitar playing the best is just playing lots of guitar. Okay, so all this, if you're sat at home and you're like, oh my god, like I can't even, like I've got a little practice amp and now I've got to get pedals and loopers, and it's all just toys. And if that makes your experience better, great, but it's not an absolute necessity. And actually my setup is really low key, and I like that because low key doesn't go wrong. I want to spend time playing the guitar, I don't want to spend time twiddling knobs and chasing the perfect thing. It's all in here, folks. It's all in your fingers. Okay? So with that caveat, my approach to pedals is to augment the sound that I've already got. So, like in here, in the studio, my pedal board is currently set to achieve the most tones possible so that I can deliver these lessons for you on YouTube. Now, my go-to has always been a little Fender amp, and they have got smaller over time. I like valve amps. Now, you could go down on a massive what's the right way? I could spend ages talking about why valve amps are better and one thing or another. This is all the guys that I really respect and I really want to sound like, the old records that I like from the 60s and 70s, they all use these type of amps, so that's why I've got one. I've got 6 Boss Katanas associated with the school upstairs, so I know those really well. Now, if you've got a Katana at home, I would, whether I set this amp this way or whether I set the Katana this way, it's identical. I'd set it with a clean channel and then mess about with pedals on the floor for getting different tones. Now, if you don't have the pedals at your disposal, you can change the settings on the amp, like the amp type and one thing or another. But if I'm using pedals with an amplifier, I always like a clean platform to start with, and then I stack overdrives on top of each other to get different tones. If you really want to get into this, there's a fantastic channel called That Pedal Show, who I've watched for years and were a big inspiration for me starting this here. Dan and Mick, I don't know them personally, I'd like to meet them one day though, it would be pretty cool. They get into the really nerdy stuff. I'm but a simple Yorkshireman just trying to do his job. Okay, so with all that caveat out of the way, this is what my pedal board looks like currently. So I've got a Boss tuner, I've got a little mini, what we call tube screamer, Shur Riot, super overdrive, and then my loop pedal that I've been using for my lessons. Okay, now these two are overdrive pedals. They're supposed to simulate the sound of a cranked amplifier, something like what I've got over here, without it being deafening. This is a distortion pedal and it's supposed to sound a little bit more, little bit throatier. So let's start with the tube screamer. Now the tube screamer, my clean tone is relatively kind of straightforward. Bit of reverb. I can do all that kind of stuff, or so anything that doesn't require any overdrive I've already got from my amplifier. If I need a little bit of dirt, now I've got like 2 varying stages of dirt. I've got you think of these old records like, now that might be a bit loud, sorry if I've just deafened you all. That's supposed to simulate the sound of a cranked amplifier. If I turn this amplifier up to 10, that's what it'd sound like. But it would be really deafening. So let's say I'm playing a song. I'd use this on the chorus. or if I've got something that's a little bit more throatier, like we did a lesson on Summer of '69 a couple of weeks ago, that's the pedal that I use. So I want distortion, but I don't want to go mega kind of 80s. Speaking of mega 80s, that's what the Shur Riot does for me. So the Shur Riot is a distortion pedal, and it's what we call an amp in a box. An amp in a box is a pedal that's supposed to make it sound like one of these buggers. A big Marshall in a box. Marshalls and Fenders do have completely different sounds. I tend to spend more time playing Fenders because and also look at the size of it. That goes in the boot of the car lovely, whereas this one I've got to get the van and it's a ball ache. Listen to the difference. This is the Tube Screamer. Really like, I'm thinking Paul Kossoff, Free, classic rock. This. Much more kind of... Now sometimes I've got to go that heavy, you know, if I'm doing, well, I don't know. You need that sort of like heavy gain staging. So far we've got 3 tones. I've got clean, light overdrive, and then heavy distortion. My next pedal, which is the Super Overdrive, is my lead tone. Now, again, this is like really, I don't know the best way to put it. It's really subjective, is this, and my way is not the way to do everything. You know, you'll find your own way of doing it, and don't let anyone tell you it's wrong. If it sounds good, it sounds good, right? So my lead tone, usually people will stack overdrive pedals on top of each other to get those tones, and I've never got it quite right. So what I tend to do now is I have one pedal that is just, when I'm doing a guitar solo, that's the tone. And it's basically like the Tube Screamer, excuse me, but I've turned the treble up and the volume up. So if my clean tone... Now I've got this set in the sort of, I've just done a lesson on While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and Clapton used a gold top for it, so this is what I've got it set to currently, but it's got that sort of... But if I go to the bridge pickup... Now, in the room that sounds quite sharp, but when a band's playing you'll find that it'll sort of poke through. Now the last part of my pedal board, I've got the looper over it. I always save this at the end for something a little bit special and sort of cater to whatever I'm using. So my pedal board's a constantly revolving door of different pedals depending on what I'm doing. So like for today, for example, I'm teaching and I need to put some loops on so that I can demonstrate parts. So that's why the looper's on there. A couple of weeks ago I was doing a lesson on Hank Marvin, and I needed some delay to do the gallops in there. You know, the pick. You know, when it goes underneath something, you try to pick your pick up in a hurry and it just doesn't work that way. You know, when Hank does the in Apache, I needed a delay pedal, so the delay pedal went there on the end of the chain. A couple of other things that I use. That's a fuzz pedal, Meistro Fuzz pedal. I play for like a Northern Soul kind of outfit occasionally, and sometimes some of the lead riffs have this really kind of gnarly tone. Think Satisfaction by Stones, that's a good sort of barometer. So although I only use this pedal occasionally, when I do, it's got a certain sound. And that's how I approach this stuff. It's the same with guitars. It's all tools for my job, because I don't just teach, I go out and play for people as well. I mean, in sort of a couple of summers ago, I think my record was 6 different bands in 1 week with 6 different set lists. So I've got to be able to adapt and overcome quite a lot. This one, this is called a mirror. That's for plugging an acoustic guitar into a sound system. And it's just supposed to make it sound less rubbish. And it does. It does. I don't use it here when I'm recording the lessons, but it's worth having. But that's a pedal that sits on the shelf pretty much 50 weeks of the year, but the 2 weeks of the year that I use it, I'm really glad that I've got it. So, and that's how you amass this sort of collection of stuff. You don't It's not, ooh, I must have every pedal. I've always bought things with a job in mind for it. Yeah? Multi-effects pedals, that's something that you can get into. Personally, I prefer one pedal at a time because I've got ultimate control, and I don't, and you know how I said at the start of the video, you spend a lot of time kind of messing about, twiddling knobs and finding the perfect sound. For me, it's when you're being paid to play guitar, it's different from when you're just doing it for pleasure. Don't get me wrong, I get a lot of pleasure through playing, but I need to do something and I need to do it quickly because we're on the clock. You know, I don't do sessions, but if somebody was doing a session in a studio, time is money. If I need to change my tone, I can just bend down and or alter the pedal straight away. I don't have to go through a menu, through a bank, remember how to do it, plug it into my laptop. I've not got time for that. I like super simple, super straightforward for Neanderthal Yorkshireman like myself. So, with all that being said, that's my approach to pedals in a really, really, really sort of short. I'm trying to keep it as short as possible and show you a couple of different types. But really, it's just an extension of what I do. Right tool for the job, try and get it sounding like they did. And most of the time on the records they were using Fender or Marshall and turning them all the way up. Now, unfortunately, I can't do that here in the space, but I've got pedals that simulate that. And you don't need loads of gear. It's nice to have nice stuff, just as it's nice to drive a nice car. But don't think you need to buy things that are going to make you better. What makes you better is actually doing this. So, I'll stop ranting at you. I'll see you next week for another lesson. Thank you so much.